I started crying after a day of this, and I said, well, I think this is pornography. And he said, no, this is art.
She was dating a rock star, living in mansions, wearing diamonds. Then she found out he got another woman pregnant. Most people would have fallen apart. Not Jerry Hall. She married a billionaire, and when that marriage ended, she walked away with millions. This is the story of the supermodel who turned every betrayal into a payday. The girl who started in a Paris apartment with Grace Jones and ended up beside Mick Jagger in the spotlight. Even before her name was tied to scandal, she had already made herself impossible to ignore. At 16, she left Texas with nothing but insurance money and ambition, stepping into Europe's fashion capital at the height of its revolution. She was taller than most models, blonder than most actresses, and bolder than anyone expected. Within a year, her face was on Vogue covers and Roxy Music album art. Jerry Hall wasn't just in the fashion world, she defined it, and she refused to age out of it. From Saint Laurent runways in the 70s to campaigns in her 60s, she became proof that beauty could buy time, power, and entry into rooms where everything had a price. But Jerry's story didn't begin with runways and magazine covers. It began in Gonzales, Texas, in a crowded house ruled by a volatile father who gave his twin daughters boys' names because he had wanted sons. In that world, being tall and beautiful wasn't glamorous. It was survival. By 14, Hall was already 5 feet 10 inches and modeling for the Kim Dawson agency in Dallas. She wasn't just tall. She understood that her body was her only asset in a house where being a daughter meant being a disappointment. The modeling wasn't about vanity. It was about survival economics. Every photo shoot was money saved. Every paycheck was distance from her father's fists. Then came the car accident. Most teenagers would have bought a car with the insurance payout, maybe saved for college. Hall bought something different, a one-way ticket to Paris. She was 16 years old. No return flight, no backup plan. The decision revealed something fundamental about Hall's character. She didn't hedge her bets. She didn't keep one foot in Texas while testing the waters in Europe. She took the insurance money, literally compensation for physical trauma, and converted it into a complete severing from her past. The girl who boarded that plane understood something that would define her entire life. Sometimes the biggest risk is staying where you are. Her father's abuse hadn't broken her. It had taught her to read rooms, to understand power dynamics, to know when to run. These skills would serve her in Parisian nightclubs, in rock star bedrooms, in billionaire boardrooms. But first, she had to survive Paris itself. Paris in 1973 wasn't waiting for another pretty American girl. The city was full of them, runaways and dreamers who thought cheekbones could translate into rent money. Hall's first move wasn't to pound the pavement looking for modeling agencies. She went to Saint-Tropez, to the beach where the wealthy played and the influential vacationed. Claude Haddad found her there, not in a casting call, not through a formal submission, but lying on the sand like she belonged there. The beach discovery sounds like luck, but Hall had positioned herself perfectly. Saint-Tropez wasn't random, it was calculated. That's where the fashion world went to relax, where agents and designers went to discover. She made herself discoverable. Back in Paris, Hall moved into a flat with 2 other aspiring models, Grace Jones and Jessica Lange. 3 women who would all become famous, living on cigarettes and ambition. But while Jones and Lange partied through the Parisian nights, Hall stayed focused. She was on the runways by 1974, walking for Yves Saint Laurent and Thierry Mugler. The haute couture houses didn't just want models, they wanted presence. Hall had learned presence in Texas, where commanding attention might mean avoiding a beating. Her first British Vogue cover came in 1975. Then came the Roxy Music album cover, Siren, that same year. The album cover wasn't just another job, it was Hall's face attached to rock and roll. Her image merged with music that played in every hip club from London to New York. She wasn't just modeling clothes anymore. She was becoming something more valuable, a face that meant something, a presence that suggested danger and sophistication simultaneously. By 1977, she'd been on 40 magazine covers. Fashion editors described her as having cornered the couture market. But Hall understood that magazine covers were just paper. Real power came from the people you knew, the rooms you could enter, the men who wanted you. She was about to meet one who would change everything. Bryan Ferry was everything a young model should want. The Roxy Music frontman was sophisticated, successful, stable. When they met on a photo shoot in 1975, Hall was 19. They were engaged within 5 months. Ferry represented security, respectability, a normal kind of fame. Hall broke the engagement in 1977. She'd met Mick Jagger at a dinner party the year before. He was still married to Bianca and, by Hall's account, using heroin when they began seeing each other, until she told him to get clean or go. He did. Where Ferry offered stability, Jagger offered something else entirely. Mythology, global fame, and a weakness she could manage by insisting on sobriety. The decision to leave Ferry for Jagger looked like a romantic impulse. It was actually a cold calculation. Ferry was successful, but Jagger was iconic. Ferry had fans. Jagger had mythology. And while Ferry was stable, Jagger needed saving. Hall had learned in Texas that sometimes the most powerful position isn't beside the strongest person. It's beside the person who needs you most. "I got him to quit heroin," Hall would later say about Jagger. This wasn't romantic nursing. This was strategic positioning. While Jagger was using, he was vulnerable, unreliable, manipulable. Clean? He was one of the most powerful men in entertainment. And Hall would be the one who cleaned him up. She became known, by her own telling, for staying clear-headed at Studio 54, the one person who remembered what happened the night before. While everyone else lost themselves in the night's excesses, Hall stayed sharp. She watched. She remembered. She accumulated information and influence, while others accumulated hangovers and regrets. By late 1978, Jagger's divorce from Bianca was finalized. Hall had successfully navigated from being an engaged woman to being another woman to an official girlfriend. She'd broken an engagement, helped end a marriage, and emerged as the winner. The Texas girl who'd fled abuse had learned to create her own forms of power. Elizabeth Scarlett Jagger was born in March 1984. James Leroy followed in August 1985. His twin sister miscarried, a loss Hall rarely discussed publicly. 2 children in 2 years, both carrying Jagger's name, both tying her to rock royalty. But no ring. The lack of marriage might have looked like bohemian freedom, like rock and roll rebellion against conventional structures. It was actually a careful dance of power and vulnerability. Hall wanted marriage, Jagger didn't, so she built something else, a public perception of marriage without the legal structure. From the outside, their life looked like a marriage. Multiple homes, public appearances, 4 children. Inside, Hall had set one non-negotiable years earlier: no drugs, which she says Jagger honored after she drew the line. She did the work of a partner without the legal protections of a wife. November 21st, 1990, should have changed everything. An elaborate Hindu ceremony in Bali, complete with traditional costumes and vows. Hall wore red and gold. Jagger actually showed up. The ceremony was beautiful, spiritual, and photographed for posterity. It was also legally meaningless. Georgia May was born in January 1992, 2 years after the Bali ceremony. Gabriel Luke arrived in December 1997. 4 children spanning 13 years, all while Hall remained legally single. She was building a dynasty without documentation, an empire without legal architecture. The arrangement worked as long as both parties agreed it worked. Hall got the lifestyle, the platform, the association with one of rock's biggest names. She got to raise her children in unimaginable privilege. She got to be Mrs. Jagger in every way that mattered except the one that would protect her if everything fell apart. The Carla Bruni affair started in the early 1990s. Hall found out the way wives always find out: too late to prevent it, too early to ignore it. Her response was direct. She called Bruni and demanded she leave my man alone. The confrontation made headlines. Hall fighting for her man, the wronged woman standing her ground. But she didn't leave. The calculation was clear. The platform Jagger provided was worth more than the humiliation his affairs caused. She could endure the Carla Brunis of the world as long as she remained the primary partner, the mother of his children, the woman he came home to. The woman's name mattered less than what she represented. Another model, Another affair, but this time something different. She was pregnant with Jagger's child. After 23 years, 4 children, countless affairs weathered and forgiven, this was Hall's limit. "I had put up with his infidelities," Hall would write later. The past tense is crucial. Had put up with, implying a deliberate choice, a calculated tolerance. But then, having a child with another woman was too much. The pregnancy represented something Hall couldn't tolerate. Permanent evidence of betrayal, a child who would forever exist outside their family structure, proof that Jagger's commitments extended beyond their carefully constructed arrangement. An affair could be hidden, forgotten, forgiven. A child could not. Hall filed for separation in 1999. The Bali ceremony that had seemed so romantic 9 years earlier now revealed its true nature: theater without substance. The annulment was granted quickly. 23 years, 4 children, and Hall walked away with no legal claim to anything beyond child support. The settlement negotiations exposed the fundamental inequality of their arrangement. Hall had been the public wife, the mother, the stabilizing force, the woman who got Jagger off heroin and kept him functional for 2 decades. But legally, she was just a girlfriend who'd stayed too long. Friends described Hall as dignified during the split. She didn't rage publicly, didn't sell stories to tabloids, didn't destroy Jagger in the press. She simply left. But the dignity masked a harsh lesson. Love without legal protection is just sentiment. Partnership without papers is just an arrangement that either party can end whenever they want. Rupert Murdoch was 84 when his niece introduced him to Jerry Hall in late 2015. Hall was 59, technically age-appropriate for a man in his 80s, but the 25-year gap still raised eyebrows. More important than the age was the power. Murdoch wasn't just wealthy, he controlled media empires, influenced elections, and shaped global discourse. The engagement came in January 2016, just months after they started dating. The wedding followed on March 4, 2016. Civil ceremony, legal documentation, binding marriage recognized by British law. Everything the Bali ceremony with Jagger hadn't been. Murdoch announced himself the luckiest and happiest man in world after the wedding. He briefly quit Twitter in celebration. The media mogul, who rarely showed emotion, was suddenly giddy, public, and performatively in love. Hall had something Murdoch wanted. Beauty, certainly, but also cultural cash. She brought rock and roll credibility to his corporate empire, glamour to his business dealings. But Hall had learned from Jagger. This time, she got the paperwork right. Legal marriage meant legal protection. If things went wrong, and in Hall's experience things always went wrong, she would be protected. The marriage lasted 6 years, long enough to seem real, short enough to avoid the deep entanglements that had trapped her with Jagger. When it ended in June 2022, it ended with brutal efficiency. Murdoch reportedly informed Hall by email that the marriage was over. She served him divorce papers as he boarded a private jet, citing irreconcilable differences. The real differences might have been with Murdoch's children. Reports suggested Hall had clashed with them, particularly Lachlan, who supposedly influenced his father's decision to end the marriage. The email dismissal, if true, revealed how power worked in Murdoch's world. No discussion, no negotiation, just corporate efficiency applied to personal relationships. But this time, Hall was ready. The divorce settlement reportedly included tens of millions of pounds plus Homewood House, an £11 million Oxfordshire estate. The exact terms remained confidential, but the scope was clear. Hall had learned to get paid for her pain. Both parties released statements calling each other good friends and wishing each other well. The same dignified exit Hall had managed with Jagger, but this time with a fundamental difference. She was walking away wealthy, protected, compensated for her time. At 65, Jerry Hall became the face of St. Laurent's Spring-Summer 2022 campaign. The same fashion house that had launched her career in 1974 was now using her to sell clothes to women who weren't even born when she first walked their runway. The campaign wasn't nostalgia. It was proof that Hall had transcended the normal modeling timeline. Most models vanish by 40 as the industry cycles through younger faces and newer stories. Hall refused to vanish. She converted scandal into story value, age into authority, and experience into a kind of expertise no 20-year-old can sell. The camera read her history, the clothes borrowed her credibility. That credibility didn't arrive by accident. It was compounded through work, reinvention, and refusing to let headlines define the frame. The dynasty extended beyond her. Elizabeth Lizzie Jagger debuted as a model in 1998, just as her parents' relationship was unraveling. Georgia May signed at 16 and went on to walk for houses, Versace, Chanel among them, that had embraced her mother decades earlier. Their father's fame and their mother's bone structure made introductions. Their mother's playbook, beauty as currency, composure as leverage, taught them how to stay. Hall's 2010 memoir, built from photographs and measured anecdotes, curated what to reveal and what to leave unsaid. It wasn't confessional enough to shock, nor coy enough to dismiss. She acted on stage, appeared in Tim Burton's Batman, and kept surfacing in major campaigns and editorials. Each appearance added to the mythology. The woman who survived Jagger married Murdoch and turned each chapter into usable narrative. In 2023, she was photographed at Mick Jagger's 80th birthday celebration. They stood together, smiling with their 4 children, a public image of equilibrium earned the hard way. It took a quarter-century after their split to arrive at that kind of ease, a timeline that says more than any fairy tale ending. Industry watchers note the rarity of Hall's path. Vogue covers and work while raising multiple children, a career that never fully receded. Many models are forced to choose between momentum and motherhood. Hall declined the premise, raised 4 children, kept working, weathered 2 of the most powerful men in their worlds, and emerged with both her image and independence intact. Jerry Hall's story reads less like a fairy tale than a ledger, columns of gains and columns of costs. The insurance payout that funded a one-way ticket to Paris became a modeling career. The modeling career purchased proximity to bands, artists, and the Rolling Stones. Proximity bought a global spotlight, and the spotlight bought access to rooms where decisions were made. Each step up the ladder carried a service charge. Some charges were itemized in headlines. She spent 20-plus years with Mick Jagger, raised 4 children, and participated in a Balinese ceremony later ruled invalid, proof that love without paperwork can be poetry and still not be law. She endured public infidelity, including the child with another woman that ended the relationship, and years afterward pressed forward with work that outlived the scandal. Later, she married Rupert Murdoch, entered a different empire, and exited swiftly. What makes Hall unusual is not that she traded beauty for access, it's that she kept renegotiating the terms. She learned to turn spectacle into narrative, narrative into leverage, and leverage into longevity. The Saint Laurent campaign at 65 wasn't a curtain call. It stated she could still convert attention into work on her own timeline. That outcome required choices: composure over confession, strategy over resentment, future value over immediate vindication. Her daughters absorbed the lesson without inheriting the wreckage. They saw that beauty is a currency that depreciates, that powerful men provide platforms while extracting their cut, that the only sure asset is the dignity you maintain on exit. They saw that this ledger can be managed, not erased, carefully managed. So how do you score a life like this? Victory or survival? The answer depends on which numbers you trust. If you focus on headlines, you see betrayal, annulment, emails, and departures. If you follow the balance sheet over decades, you see 4 children launched, work that never stopped, and a woman standing at 68, neither victim nor heroine, but an expert in terms and timing. The game was rigged. She still learned how to play it. She paid the tax, adjusted the rate, and kept the account open. In the end, Hall didn't avoid the price of fame. She decided to pay it wisely. That may be the only honest victory available inside an economy that values faces first and people second, not escaping the transaction but insisting on better terms every time.